Well, Brent, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
One of the areas I love to talk about is just sort of the practice of the practice of ophthalmology. I want to just understand a bit about the business behind it, because we're seeing a lot of activity from private equity investors who are looking to create larger vehicles to consolidate ophthalmology practices or build larger practices. What are the biggest challenges facing ophthalmology practices today?
You know, that's a great question, Tom. I would say one of the biggest challenges, not just in ophthalmology, but for all of us in healthcare, is that continual reimbursement pressure that we all face.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know exactly what CMS will do. There's lots of committee structures that are attacking it from different angles all the time. So I think it's always trying to stay ahead of that curve and being prepared for alternative payment models. How do you do those sorts of things and have your organization prepared for any of those eventual hits to your reimbursement? So to me, that's probably one of the number one things that keeps me up at night, how to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that, tied to that is really, who do you partner with? You know, in today's day and age, everybody is partnering up, whether
Mm-hmm.
it be with a local health system, an insurance company, private equity partner. You know, the list is pretty long, but I think we're going to see more and more. All of us in this space are going to have to make decisions like that.
Have you looked at other specialties and seen a model that you think reflects ophthalmology best, or is every specialty sort of have its own quirks and it's hard to draw comps from one to the other?
Well, I think, you know, there's things you can learn from each of the other specialties that are out there. So I have colleagues and friends in many of them, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, orthopedics is one of those that's really interesting.
Yep.
It's been going through several layers of consolidation in the market that I'm from, out of the Minneapolis area, yet it's still not an area where the private equity has stepped in or folks like that. It's been a lot of pulling together of smaller groups that are more of a fragmented nature and making big mega practices, if you will. And then I also see in dermatology, they tend to have some more of those groups are getting involved with private equity. And I think part of the differential is, it's pretty obvious, it's that cash and carry component that exists in dermatology. It doesn't really exist in the orthopedic world and in other worlds. So.
Mm-hmm. And in ophthalmology, is the comparison, I've heard the dermatology or aesthetics comparison that the private equity investors have done well in dermatology, and because ophthalmology shares some of those traits, that this is an area where that formula may apply. Do you see that connection as well? You mentioned the cash aspect of it. Is it strong? Are they similar specialties?
Yes, it's a great question. I think there's certainly an element of that cash component to the ophthalmology space.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly not as big as the dermatology space, so I think it's a bit different from that perspective. But I think the thing that's similar is in ophthalmology, it tends to be a rather fragmented market
Mm-hmm.
all over the country, which I think is probably what grabs the attention of a lot of the investment community, as they see an opportunity to pull things together in a more organized fashion and prepare organizations to take on bigger and bolder things, such as risk contracts. They feel they can be a strong part of that process for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked to Dick Lindstrom about the partnering with Waud Capital. How did that come together, and what does it mean going forward?
So just a little bit of background about myself. I joined Minnesota Eye as the president back in October of
Mm-hmm.
2016.
Oh, okay.
So they were already a bit down the path of the private equity conversation, as you heard in Dr. Lindstrom's conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came in, we were really landing who that partner was going to be. And so as we went through that process and Waud was selected, a couple of the big pieces from my perspective that were so important was, you know, you have a lot of the younger partners in terms of the financial ability to take on additional debt and personal guarantees. I think those things certainly factored in. And for us, the ability to grow our organization at a quicker pace. I think in most aspects of business, if you're not growing, that can be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's no different in ophthalmology than in any other sort of business that you might be in. So the organization really sorted through that, and I was part of that process, and we landed on Waud as our partner.
So after that transaction was done, has it changed your job considerably? Do you have access to resources that you didn't previously have, and now you're able to pursue that growth that maybe you wouldn't have before?
Great question. The access to resources is tremendously valuable,
Mm-hmm.
and it has proven to be the case already. I'll give you a great example. We had lots of opportunity to take our reporting to some different levels to get information out in a fashion that's even more usable to all the operators in the organization. And that's always something a little bit hard to find the investment dollars to take that to the level that you want to.
Mm-hmm.
When we partner with Waud, that's something they're very willing to step in right away and make some extra investments to help us do that. So that's been tremendously helpful. Now we get lots of really good real-time information. It was always there, but to get it organized and you just get distracted with so many other things day-to-day running a business. That's one thing right off the top of my head that comes to mind. Secondly is the ability to have them as business partners, to reflect and process business ideas and strategic conversations and where we can go with things. And I think that's been tremendously valuable for all of us too.
I'm sure they've seen a lot of things and share those insights. And lastly, are you getting a lot of phone calls from your counterparts asking similar questions to this, like these?
I sure am. Getting a lot of phone calls, lots of emails, and running into a lot of folks out here at the meetings. But yeah, I would expect that will continue, and I'm always happy to talk with folks because it's a pretty big decision for each individual practice to make, but definitely for us and for myself, I feel we made a great decision and have a great future.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing some insights today.
You bet. Thank you.